looking at the global financial picture and how Bitcoin gets to 800,000 and above, there is one piece of data that is at the linchpin of the entire global financial system.
What if the collapse of the entire global economy could be triggered by one number from Japan? And what if a 9-year-old asked the most important Bitcoin question of the decade? Max Keiser just dropped a nuclear take. The dollar dies, the bond market crashes, and Bitcoin, it becomes a lifeboat or a religion. Stick around, because what he says next might just flip your worldview inside out. Max Keiser doesn't mince words. He says the linchpin of the entire global financial system is not the US dollar, it's the interest rate on Japan's 10-year bond. And here's the kicker. That number is like an EKG of the world economy, Max warns. When it spikes, everything flatlines. As Japan's interest rates climb, the decades-old yen carry trade, a shadowy engine behind cheap global money, begins to break. If Japan is forced to sell US treasuries, welcome to the bond apocalypse. A $300 trillion domino effect. Confidence crashes. Bitcoin explodes. Max rolls back the curtain on Wall Street's great illusion, how we shifted from real production to financialized smoke and mirrors. From auto factories to fast food chains, everything now runs on debt derivatives and structured finance. It's not capitalism, Max says, it's casino capitalism, and the house is on fire. He's not just warning you about a bubble, he's describing a rigged empire built on borrowed time. Max lays it out plain. When fiat trust dies, and it will, the flight to Bitcoin becomes inevitable. $500,000, $800,000, $1 million a coin, not hype, math. He describes a world where Bitcoin isn't just a hedge, it's the last raft floating on a sinking economic ocean. Before we dive deeper into Max Keiser's jaw-dropping insights about Bitcoin's future and the collapse of fiat, let me ask you something. Do you believe in what Bitcoin stands for? Freedom, truth, a way out of the broken system. If you do, take a second right now. Smash that like button. Drop a comment below with Bitcoin is freedom if you believe it too. And if this message resonates with you, share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Oh, and if financial freedom, crypto, and truth bombs like Max Keiser's are your thing, hit that subscribe button right now. You're in the right place. All right, let's get into it. Max Keiser isn't just predicting Bitcoin's rise, he's forecasting the end of the world as we know it. Let's find out why.
There's one number that tells you, like an EKG machine, what the health of the global economy is at. Do you know what that number is?
I do not.
It's the rate of interest on the 10-year Japanese bond. And I'll explain why. So, going all the way back to the Reagan era of the 1980s, the world became financialized, the Reagan-Thatcher era of deregulation. And we went from a manufacturing society to one of banks and financiers and structured finance and on corporate balance sheets deriving a large percentage of profits from doing trading activities on Wall Street. So the biggest companies in the world, they make a lot of money just by trading with Wall Street. So a car company will make a lot of money on Wall Street just trading financial instruments. A restaurant company, you become financialized. And the best and the brightest became financiers and quants and hedge fund managers. And that's the era of finance. And what drives finance ultimately is cheap money. How cheaply can I borrow my money to create my structured product, my derivative, that's going to help me put cash to the bottom line of whatever enterprise I'm involved with. And for years, for decades, the cheapest place to get money has been Japan. Because after World War II, they had a very structured pension system that accumulated trillions of yen in a honeypot of cash that was a go-to cheap place for them to get money to fund their economy. They opened that up to global financiers who can then borrow in yen, which is like 1/10 of 1%, and put that immediately, let's say, into a US dollar equivalent and get 4 or 5% on that money by simply carrying the cash from yen to dollars. It became known as the yen carry trade. So what's been happening in the last 2 years is that the yen carry trade is breaking down and interest rates are going up. So the 10-year treasury in Japan has never been higher. It's like 3.5%. And it's at a precipice now where if it gets much higher, the Japanese economy is going to have to start selling U.S. Treasury bonds to stay solvent, which would create a cascading event I call the bond apocalypse, where the global bond market crashes. And that's a $200 to $300 trillion market, which is one of the biggest markets in the world, second only to the Forex market. In that environment, Bitcoin spikes to $500,000, $600,000, $800,000 a coin as a safe haven, as capital flees the collapsing global bond market due to the unwinding of the global Ponzi scheme or carry trade. And we see it every day. You can track it by just looking at the 10-year Japanese government bond to see where we are, how close we are to the tipping point where the entire global economy goes into free fall and Bitcoin spikes toward $1 billion.
If this is a truly global financial reset, what dies first? The dollar, the bond market, or trust in governments?
Okay, what dies first? Well, you'd have to say confidence or trust dies first.
In the government?
In the market. So markets are run on confidence. People buy a stock today at 20 times projected next year's earnings because they have confidence that NVIDIA is going to make that number. People buy a U.S. Treasury bond at 4 or 5% because they have confidence that the U.S. Treasury can pay that interest in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. You need confidence to run a capitalist economy. And if that dies, and the next would be the dollar. If confidence, the next to die would be the dollar, the U.S. dollar. If confidence dies in the U.S. and U.S. dollar, the ability to not be printed to death, which is on the verge of being printed to death, then inflation will spike higher, which kills the bond market.
How is Bitcoin going to remain decentralized if a large percentage of Bitcoin is going to be sort of like divided by few individuals and companies?
Well, I mean, the decentralization means essentially that no single entity has dominion over the network. So Michael Saylor can't change the protocol. You can own 1 million Bitcoin. You could have a few players owning very large positions, and even if they colluded, even if they work together, they're not going to change the protocol.
Is it a possibility to centralize Bitcoin mining by sort of like having like more percentage of the power?
That is increasingly outside the realm of possibility because you have game theory where it's tough to get people to coordinate this type of thing and invalidate their own coins by attacking themselves with a 51% attack. In the case of Bitcoin, there are remedies, but I think ultimately when you discuss every single possibility under the sun that could happen to the protocol in terms of risk, it does come down to one basic idea, which is faith. The Bitcoin protocol gives humanity faith that it will survive. And I think that's its saving grace. There is something to say about the need for our species to hope and have faith that we will rise above this hell of fiat money.
You've also in the past called Bitcoin like this spiritual shift as much as a financial one.
Yes.
What happens to a person or to a country when they fully embrace it?
What I call the Bitcoin singularity is when we all enter Bitcoin consciousness. And the Bitcoin consciousness is when my Satoshis and your Satoshis can be exchanged between us telepathically. And then all of your Satoshis become my Satoshis, and all of my Satoshis become your Satoshis. and we are in one being of the hive mind. And I can send you Satoshis telepathically. And I can just look at you and just send you 1,000,000 Satoshis. And you can be like, thank you. You can send me 800,000 back. Thank you. And that constant murmuration, like starlings in the sky, flying through the digital space of Bitcoin and perfect money, is when we enter the kingdom of Bitcoin and we become one with Satoshi and we see the face of Satoshi. And then we dissolve as ego-driven monkeys taking acid, and we become pure spirit.
And one of the things that I also want to touch on is recently you did a podcast and you're talking about the Satoshi generation.
Yes.
So we're coming to a sense where, like, for example, someone that was born in 08 or 09 when Bitcoin was first, talked about, they're 16 years old now. They're growing up with Bitcoin. And the price of Bitcoin, it's not obviously what it was back in the day. How can someone that is now, for example, starting out, hasn't even worked a day in their life, start accumulating Bitcoin in a way that won't be so intimidating?
I was speaking at the halving party in El Salvador, and a 9-year-old kid came up to me on stage, and with a similar question, like, I'm 9 years old, am I too late for Bitcoin? And I said, after thinking about it for a moment, actually, I'm too early. What I mean by that is, in 20 years' time, when he's 29, he'll be living in a Bitcoin world. And everything that comes with living in a Bitcoin world, I'll be gone.
What would you say is the biggest obstacle or challenge in that Bitcoin faces in the path to becoming a global reserve currency?
Fear.
Fear?
Fear of everything that we've been talking about. Fear of love. Everything can be divided between fear and love. Those are the two paths, only two paths available to anybody at any moment. Bitcoin is a path to love. Fiat money is a path to fear. Everyone who's against Bitcoin is fearful, full of fear that something will be taken away from them, that they'll lose power, that their understanding of how the world works might get crushed. That has happened many times to people, high-profile economists, who fear having their worldview crushed by this new asset class, this new reality, this new state of consciousness, Bitcoin. And they act out. They become vengeful. They become hate-filled. They become nasty. And then they disappear because their view can't survive.
What is your hottest take on Bitcoin?
Well, my hottest take on Bitcoin is that it's sent by God to unfuck our money, right? So God sent his son, we killed him, and he's like, I'll give you one more chance. I'll send Bitcoin. If this doesn't unfuck you, then there's no hope for you, and you're all gone. It is flash.
So now you've heard it. From Japan's silent ticking debt bomb to the collapse of trust in governments and Bitcoin rising as the final lifeboat, Max Keiser doesn't just predict numbers, he's painting the endgame. But now the real question is for you. Do you think Bitcoin is truly our last chance to fix a broken financial system? Is Max Keiser a prophet or just early again? And when trust dies, what will you turn to? Let us know in the comments. We read every single one. If this video gave you chills or even just a new perspective, do me a favor. Hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to wake up, and if you've already subscribed, thank you. You're part of a growing movement. If you haven't yet, now's the time. Subscribe for more explosive Bitcoin content, market breakdowns, and financial truth bombs. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.